In the heart of Southeast Asia lies a jungle known for swallowing entire expeditions whole, dense, unforgiving, and echoing with legends of those who never found their way home. But one story from this wilderness would travel far beyond its trees and mountains. It begins with a distress call, a desperate cry for help from foreign troops trapped deep inside hostile territory. What happened next would not only test the courage of those who heard it, but also reveal a kind of bravery the world rarely sees. Welcome to the channel, and today we uncover a rescue mission that shocked the world. Before we dive into this gripping account, remember to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you love powerful true-to-life stories from around the world. Our documentary today highlights the remarkable courage of Filipino soldiers, ordinary men who stepped into an extraordinary crisis. These are individuals trained not just for combat, but for survival, compassion, and duty. And when a group of foreign troops became trapped in the jungle during a failed reconnaissance mission, they had no idea that the hope they prayed for would come from a country they barely knew. It began on a humid afternoon when a multinational unit from a foreign peacekeeping task force attempted to reach a remote village suspected of harboring critical intelligence. Their operation was designed to be quick: land, recover documents, and evacuate. But the jungle had other plans. From the moment their boots touched the ground, radio interference grew stronger, visibility dropped, and even veteran soldiers felt disoriented by the thick, suffocating air. Hours later, they realized the truth: they weren't advancing. They were walking in circles, and their extraction point had vanished behind miles of dense overgrowth. The foreign units soon found themselves low on supplies and surrounded by hostile militia who had picked up their tracks. With communication down and nightfall creeping in, their mission turned into a desperate attempt to survive. One soldier, trembling as he recorded an emergency transmission, spoke of fear they had never felt, even in combat zones abroad. "If anyone hears this," he said, "we don't know how much longer we'll last." The message was fragmented, nearly lost in static, but it traveled far enough to reach a Philippine military outpost monitoring regional distress frequencies. At that moment, inside the Philippine Army's 4th Recon Unit, Sergeant Ramon Mon Alvarez listened closely as the broken transmission played again. The voices were faint, but the urgency was unmistakable. Although the trapped soldiers were not Filipino, Mon felt the weight of responsibility settle in his chest. The Philippines had long upheld a reputation for helping allies in crisis, and the military was known for mounting impossible rescues. Without waiting for political clearance, Mon reported his concerns to command, insisting that a rescue team be deployed immediately. Within hours, a small team of elite jungle scouts was assembled, each man trained to read the forest like a map, to interpret sounds like signals, and to navigate terrain that others considered impenetrable. These soldiers were not equipped with high-tech drones or satellites. Instead, they relied on instinct, indigenous knowledge, and survival skills passed down from generations who lived close to the land. Their mission was simple yet dangerous: enter the jungle, locate the foreign troops, extract them safely, and avoid triggering an international incident. Led by Sergeant Mon, the Filipino team moved swiftly through areas where even GPS devices often failed. They encountered rivers swollen by sudden rains, slippery slopes disguised beneath fallen leaves, and natural traps formed by twisted roots and tall, razor-sharp grasses. But unlike the foreign troops, the Filipinos were comfortable in this environment. They had grown up climbing coconut trees, trekking hills, and surviving typhoons. The jungle, while dangerous, was a familiar challenge. For Mon and his men, this mission wasn't just about rescuing strangers, it was about proving what solidarity truly meant. Meanwhile, the foreign troops were deteriorating fast. After losing one member to an injury caused by a hidden pitfall, the remaining soldiers struggled to carry him while avoiding militia scouts. Hunger gnawed at their patience. Fear pressed against their morale. They rationed their last energy bar, taking tiny bites. At night, they formed defensive circles, listening for footsteps that might signal an attack. Their commander wrote a final note in his logbook, hoping someone would eventually find it. What none of them knew was that help was already racing toward them, quiet, determined, and Filipino. After 2 grueling days, Mon's team discovered faint traces of the foreign unit's passage, broken branches, footprints, and discarded packaging. Their pace accelerated, guided by instincts sharpened from past rescue missions during typhoons and insurgencies. They avoided militia patrols by blending with the environment, their uniforms matching the deep greens of the leaves. The Filipino soldiers moved like shadows, their silence broken only by hand signals and the occasional whisper confirming the direction of travel. The jungle seemed to resist their progress, but they pushed forward with unwavering resolve. At dawn on the 3rd day, Mon spotted smoke rising from behind a ridge. It wasn't thick enough to be a large fire, likely a makeshift signal from the trapped soldiers. He motioned for his men to crawl toward it, staying low and invisible. As they reached the edge of an elevated slope, they finally saw the foreign troops huddled beneath a rocky outcrop, exhausted, dehydrated, and barely conscious. The wounded soldier lay on a stretcher made of branches and rope. The sight sent a surge of urgency through the Filipino rescuers. But reaching them wouldn't be easy. A hostile militia group had also detected the smoke. Through binoculars, Mon saw armed men closing in from the west. Time was running out. The Filipino team had to act decisively. He signaled his men to split into 2 groups, one to retrieve the trapped soldiers, the other to intercept the approaching militia before they reached the foreigners. The jungle became a stage of tension as both forces closed in on the helpless troop. This rescue had now transformed into a race for survival. The first Filipino group descended quietly, approaching the foreign soldiers from behind. When the exhausted commander spotted them, tears welled in his eyes. "We thought you were the militia," he whispered. "We thought this was the end." But the Filipinos reassured him quickly, offering water, food, and medical care. They checked the wounded soldier's condition and stabilized him using improvised splints. Despite having barely met, the foreign troops felt an overwhelming sense of relief simply hearing voices filled with calm confidence. Meanwhile, the second Filipino group positioned themselves along the path where the militia would pass. Using natural camouflage, they blended into the forest floor. These soldiers weren't merely fighters, they were survivalists. Their strategy wasn't to engage in a prolonged battle but to confuse, delay, and divert the enemy long enough for the rescue to succeed. As the militia advanced, one Filipino scout mimicked animal calls to lure them off the trail, while others used traps and diversions to force them into a slower and more cautious approach. When the militia realized someone else was in the jungle with them, they grew suspicious and stopped their pursuit. The Filipino scouts had effectively redirected the danger without a direct confrontation. This gave Mon's team precious time. The foreign troops, though weakened, began to regain hope as they felt the steady guidance of the Filipino rescuers. For the first time in days, they believed they would make it out alive. With urgency in their steps, the combined group began the journey toward extraction. The path back was far from easy. The Filipino soldiers had to carry the injured troop member while navigating unstable terrain. At one point, they encountered a mudslide area that threatened to swallow them. Mon ordered his men to use vines and bamboo poles to create a makeshift bridge. One by one, the foreign soldiers crossed, trembling as the ground shifted beneath them. But the Filipinos, sure-footed from years of training, guided them with patience. Every obstacle became a testament to their resilience and responsibility. Rain began to pour, turning the jungle floor into a slippery maze. Visibility dropped once more, and even Mon felt the tension rising. The militia had resumed their hunt, and gunshots rang faintly in the distance. Fear flickered across the foreign soldiers' faces, but the Filipinos maintained composure. "Stay close. Stay quiet," Mon whispered. They moved in tight formation, shielding the wounded and keeping their senses sharp. The jungle, with its roaring rain and rustling leaves, seemed determined to test the limits of the rescue team. Hours later, the group reached a river swollen from the storm. Crossing it was unavoidable. The current was strong, but the Filipino soldiers quickly devised a strategy. They tied ropes around trees on both banks to create a stabilizing line. "Hold on to the rope. Don't let go," Mon instructed. One by one, the rescuers and rescued waded through the rushing water. The Filipinos crossed last, ensuring everyone made it safely. Despite the cold and exhaustion, the foreign troops felt a growing admiration for the relentless determination surrounding them. By nightfall, they reached a temporary shelter built from bamboo and leaves, a standard Filipino survival bunker used during extended missions. They set up camp there, knowing the militia was still nearby. As the foreign soldiers rested, Mon and his men took turns standing guard. The jungle came alive with the sounds of insects and distant thunder, but inside the shelter, there was a calmness born from trust. For the foreign commander, this was the first time he slept without fear since they became trapped. The next morning, the Filipinos prepared to move again. They estimated they were a full day's march from the extraction point. Food was scarce, but the Filipino soldiers shared everything they had: dried fish, rice wrapped in banana leaves, and wild fruits they gathered along the way. The foreign troops, touched by this generosity, offered apologies for underestimating the harshness of the environment. One admitted, "We thought we were prepared. We were wrong." Mon simply nodded and replied, "The jungle respects no one, but we respect each other." As they continued their journey, the forest began to thin slightly, allowing more sunlight to break through. It was a sign they were nearing the mountainous edge of the jungle. However, the militia hadn't given up. Scouts were spotted trailing them once more. This time, the Filipino team chose a different tactic: speed. They accelerated their pace, carrying the wounded troop on their shoulders, pushing through fatigue. Every soldier, Filipino or foreign, felt the weight of survival on their backs. But quitting was never an option. Eventually, they reached a steep incline leading toward a plateau. It was the final barrier before open ground and communication signal. The climb was difficult, the soil was loose, and rocks kept sliding under their feet. At one point, the foreign commander slipped, nearly falling down the slope. A Filipino soldier grabbed him by the vest just in time, anchoring him with his own body weight. "You're not dying today," the rescuer declared. And the commander knew without doubt these men were risking everything for them. When they finally reached the plateau, the foreign troops couldn't hold back their tears. They could see the sky again. Their radios crackled with faint signals, proof that they were close to rescue. But before calling for extraction, Mon wanted to ensure they hadn't been followed. His team scanned the area, using binoculars and old-school observation techniques. Only when he was certain the militia had lost their trail did he give the green light for the foreign commander to send out the emergency code. Within minutes, air support responded. A helicopter was dispatched, but thick cloud cover meant they needed to signal visually. The Filipino soldiers gathered dry leaves and branches to create controlled smoke without giving away their location. They worked swiftly, coordinating each step like a well-rehearsed symphony. The foreign troops stared in awe as these men transformed the plateau into a signaling zone in under 10 minutes. The helicopter's faint hum grew louder, sending a wave of relief through the exhausted group. But just as the helicopter approached, distant gunfire erupted. The militia had arrived at the lower slopes. Transitioning from rescue mode to defensive mode, the Filipinos formed a protective wall around the foreign troops. They didn't fire unless necessary, relying instead on strategic positions and warning shots to keep attackers at bay. The helicopter pilots spotted the conflict and maneuvered skillfully, lowering the aircraft despite the danger. It was a moment of raw tension. Minutes felt like eternity. The foreign troops were evacuated first, including the injured soldier whose life now depended on immediate medical care. As they boarded the helicopter, many looked back at the Filipino rescuers, overwhelmed with gratitude and disbelief. These strangers had risked their lives for them without hesitation. The last of the foreign soldiers saluted Mon before stepping onto the aircraft. But the mission wasn't over. The Filipinos still needed extraction. The helicopter could only take so many at once. The aircraft lifted off, temporarily leaving the Filipino team behind. As it disappeared into the clouds, Mon and his men retreated deeper into the plateau's natural cover. The militia searched the area but soon lost track of the rescuers. After nearly an hour, a second helicopter arrived, this time with additional Philippine military units ready to escort the team home. The Filipinos boarded one by one, their bodies weary but their spirits unbroken. The jungle below seemed quieter now, as if acknowledging their victory. When the mission debrief was completed, the story spread rapidly across international media. News outlets praised the Filipino soldiers for their exceptional jungle expertise, bravery, and humanity. The foreign commander publicly declared that without the Philippines' help, his unit would have perished. Messages of gratitude poured in from around the world, highlighting how compassion transcends nationality. But for Mon and his men, the greatest reward was knowing they had lived up to the core values of service, honor, and solidarity. Weeks later, the foreign troops returned to the Philippines, not for military purposes, but to personally thank the rescuers who saved their lives. They traveled to the barracks carrying letters, medals, and symbolic gifts from their home country. During the simple ceremony, the injured soldier, now fully recovered, hugged every member of Mon's team. He revealed that the experience had changed him forever, teaching him humility and deep respect for the Filipino spirit. Even the most stoic soldiers were moved to tears. The rescue operation became a defining moment in international military cooperation. For many, it showcased how, in times of crisis, humanity outweighs borders. The jungle may have been merciless, but the courage displayed within it revealed the best of what people are capable of. The Filipino soldiers had not just saved lives, they had built bridges between nations. Their story remains an example of why compassion, bravery, and unity remain powerful forces in an unpredictable world. And as we conclude this documentary, one truth stands out. The world expected the jungle to claim lives that day. Instead, it witnessed a rescue so extraordinary that it echoed across continents. Filipino soldiers stepped forward not because they had to, but because they believed in helping those in need. Their actions shocked the world, inspired millions, and reminded us that heroes often emerge from places many overlook. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, hit like, subscribe, and join us for more powerful true stories from around the globe.